Welcome back to Party Foul Radio. I am Pollo, and I'm excited to introduce our first guest this episode. FrankMusik first emerged as both a solo artist, being championed by Gaydar Radio in the UK in 2009, before going on to become an acclaimed remixer, working with such artists as Pet Shop Boys, Lady Gaga, Mika, and many, many more. More recently, he's collaborated with acts like Far East Movement, and in 2011, he produced the album Tomorrow's World for iconic 80s pop synth act Erasure, and twice in the last several years has appeared on music by RuPaul, among other artists. FrankMusik most recently produced the single Wild Side for Out recording artist from America's Got Talent, Brian Justin Crumb, who appeared on a recent episode of Party Foul Radio. In covering that interview for the Huffington Post Queer Voices, I incorrectly stated that FrankMusik is an out gay artist, and he very gently corrected me and then agreed to be on our podcast. So at this time, it's my pleasure to welcome to Party Foul Radio, Mr. FrankMusik.
Hello.
Hello. Are you ready for our interview?
I'm so ready.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me, even after I incorrectly reported that you were an out artist in my Brian
That's
Justin.
All right.
My Brian.
Everyone thinks I'm gay, even when I say I'm not. They're like, no, he's gay. He just doesn't know he's gay.
I incorrectly thought that that you were, and you were out and open, because I know you've posed naked in a gay publication before. And,
yeah.
And all of the artists that I've really followed your work in association with are either like iconic gay artists like Pet Shop Boys and Erasure and RuPaul, or newer gay artists like Brian Justin Crumb.
Yes. No, it's fine. The thing is, it's kind of interesting to me how when I was growing up, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 32 now, and when I was a kid, it was like David Bowie, Prince, and all these people who were just allowed to be gay or straight, but they were just like men singing music in whichever way they want. But now it's like, oh, if you're a guy and you sing sort of above a certain note and enjoy it, you must be gay. And it's kind of weird how we've regressed in that way. Like back in the day, you didn't really care what sexuality any pop star was. You know, no one liked George Michael because he was gay or straight. It was like George Michael because he was fucking adorable. And then it came out that he was gay. But I feel like now we're just boxing things more and more. By the way, there's no critique of you. I'm just like talking in general. You're going to regret doing this interview because I love talking to strangers. You know, and now it's like, is he gay or is he straight? Is, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, it shouldn't really matter because it mattered less like 30 years ago, I feel.
I think it's adorable that you wondered if I was as old as you at 32. I'll be 45 in January, and what I recall,
the makeup's working clearly.
What was the makeup and moisture program, like, you know, moisturizing and
that is the key, right? Moisturizing every day. I've been doing it since I was like 18. As soon as I got rid of my acne, because you can't use moisturizer when you've got a greasy face. But when my greasy face stops, yes, absolutely, that is the key. And if you don't do it from an early age, there's no going back.
Well, I think that the real key is moisturizing over top of the Botox, because that has worked so well for me. I think
you're definitely taking it one step further than I could possibly dare to go.
Wait another 10 years, you'll be questioning that. Anyway, but what I was going to say is that I recall, like, all of the artists that you mentioned, at the height of their popularity, there was always speculation of their sexuality. And I think that the difference is that during many of the generations previous, people would not come out because it was seen as like a career killer.
Yes. Well, I mean, definitely when I've... So, like, you mentioned you interviewed Andy Bell previously, right?
Oh, yes, several times, and I love him.
So I've had some pretty candid conversations with him in the past regarding, you know, the earlier times in his career. And, you know, you can find on YouTube videos of him being booed on stage in certain countries. I can't remember which countries they were, but, like, you know, because he did come out, sort of thing. And But I suppose what I mean is, back in the day, I feel there was this unspoken kind of like, he or she probably is, but it's like it comes with the territory. That's why they're a musician, and that's kind of why I've always been drawn to, the gay community. It's associated with pretty much positive things, apart from the sort of stereotype, sort of catty queeniness stuff, which is generally hyperbolic anyway. But gay culture is really kind of enshrined in a bunch of positive attributes, generally leaning sort of creative avenues.
Absolutely.
And so I think that sort of there used to be the veil of creative androgyny that with the rise of the internet and the fact that everything has become more transparent. It's more of an open conversation. But I liked it not knowing, not because of course I didn't want to know if people were gay or straight, but I like not knowing because it just let the music do the talking. It was so fun, with David Bowie, because it was like he was trying to be post-gender, post-sexuality almost. It was an act, and you didn't know where the act stopped and where the real person began. And with the internet and just no privacy, you just don't have that with any celebrity or artist really anymore, apart from maybe Shia LaBeouf. Because I don't think Shia LaBeouf knows where he begins or ends these days.
I do think benefit of that era, it allowed accessibility for an artist play to all audiences. I do think that while being out now is not a career killer in the way that it might have been previously, I recognize that it pigeonholes an artist. And people, for example, like Andy Bell, talk about an era of his career when he was considered a pop star, and now he is seen as like a niche act for the gay community.
So annoying.
Yeah, it's very annoying because musically he's wild. I mean, he's just so talented. I mean, as somebody that I'm a longtime fan of, and just as a really candid, wonderful person, I don't know whether it's because he has aged out of what is considered pop music or because of the fact that he is open about his sexuality or his HIV status or any of those things that causes him to be able to play to a lesser audience necessarily. But it does frustrate.
Well, I think sorry, Karen.
I love that you said carry on, because to me that is something that is so condescending, but you're British and we...
I'm very condescending, that's for sure. I'm naturally so.
It's got that British accent, it just sounds so cute to Americans.
Sometimes. Depends which British accent. There's quite a few, and some of them are a little bit scarier than others.
That is true. It's like American accents.
I agree with what you're saying about Andy entirely. It's a very interesting point in an age where we have the plethora of information at our fingertips on our phones. We are finding ourselves cornering ourselves almost into our own niches. So I don't think anything's changed with Andy in terms of, the songs are still globally amazing pop songs. When I was a kid, if you wanted to, whatever your hobby was or whatever you were trying to be into, you had to wait for that monthly magazine subscription. You had to go to the town centre and, cut up some jeans or something like that. Now you can go on the internet and be whatever you want and think whatever you want instantly without having to rely on anyone else. You can just sort of go into your own sort of mind ghetto, as I like to call it. It's like you can just be in your own little hole, and things have lost a lot of power. So I think music in the West has lost a lot of power with the advent of the internet. I don't think music means as much to people anymore because it's so free. It's so, and by the way, I don't care about people downloading music. It's just, it's like water. We don't care about water like countries where water is scarce. Music is not scarce. Music is easily producible now at a very cheap price. When you have someone like Andy, I think him coming out in his HIV positive stories and just sort of the way that he presents himself, it's what it's doing to the other person. I don't think it's what he's done at all. I'm not saying that's what you're saying either, but it's says more about us than it does about him. And I think we are all, in the age of the internet, we are trying to be our own gatekeepers of everything. Whereas before the magazine subscription would be the gatekeeper for you, as to whatever hobby or, we are into. And they would tell you what is good and what's hip and what isn't, like the music magazines and stuff. Now you can go out there And you could be into something for 1 week and be completely out of it the next, and you have little commitment to it or emotional attachment because you didn't have to wait, 30 days for the next magazine to come through or stuff like that. And someone like Andy, this is so sad, is the music matters less than his life choices, and that's depressing, because there's plenty of artists out there who have, whatever their personal life is, most of them you don't know, and you only care about the music, or the art, as it were. And the same can be said for politicians, is what they do rather than what they do behind closed doors that matters. And so, with Andy, he's been very candid with me in the past too, and it's very disarming as well when someone's that vulnerable and open, and I think it intimidates a lot of people. And some people, when they're intimidated by such openness, because they themselves know they can't be that open, the sort of the natural reaction is to sort of shun that person, to make yourself feel better about the fact that you are weaker than that. You are not strong enough to be that open, especially about such hard topics as HIV, and coming out back in the late 80s as well.
What you have said has made me think of a variety of things. The way things have changed regarding releases of music via the internet and downloads. The idea of a powerful single, for example, is so much less. Artists now have 5 songs out at any given time versus when I was growing up. I mean, we still see it. I mean, like Despacito or Havana, those are on the air all the time, and they're still powerful singles, but when I was growing up, every song was that. I mean, they didn't put out a new song until everyone was literally completely over.
Absolutely.
And now music is so much more throwaway.
There's a few things to unpack there. So you have the consumer and then you have the industry. And right now, the industry is completely infantilized. You have just morons running the industry. You would never see Apple run its business the way the music industry runs its business. You don't need to be, for a start, a musician to work in the music industry. You need to be a product manager. You need to be someone who's a good administrator. There's zero creativity in working in the music industry. The term A&R man, which is artist and repertoire for your audience, is the person that would craft the art, as in you'd put the singer with the right producers, the right engineers, and what have you. That role is completely dissolved in the modern music industry, and that's sad because there needs to be people, just like a car company doesn't not hire car designers. And to some degree, the car industry has done to a similar thing where instead of designing cars for people, all they're doing is asking people what they want to see with market research. It's just market research. But you and me, we don't know what a car should look like. We didn't study in what cars should look like. I want a car industry to show me something I haven't seen before. I want a music industry to play me something I haven't heard before. And the last time I felt that really happened, weirdly, in its entirety, was actually Skrillex with dubstep. We haven't seen a complete turning on the head of an industry quite like... And by the way, I'm not like a huge fan of dubstep or anything. It was just seeing an artist flip the script entirely on a genre and stuff, and it just totally highlighted the complete inadequacy of what used to be the leaders, which is the industry, telling us what and showing us artists that we hadn't found or discovered. And then the new world we live in, where the producer engineer is one guy in his bedroom or living room or whatever, and is showing the industry what they don't know because they have got rid of A&R. They're not looking out for new talent that's undiscovered. All they're doing is cashing in on talent that's already making money at a certain level, and then they come in for the scaling and maximize on the money that they can make off the back of it, which is by supplying the marketing money. Then you have the consumer. And this is really interesting because I think the advent of things like America's Got Talent and X Factor, it's created this false sense that the public, they are like Simon Cowell. They think when they're watching TV shows like this, they know talent when they see it. And they can sort of, I've seen it, you just see people sitting down watching X Factor or America's Got Talent, like, oh yeah, that person's crap, oh, that person's good. And the whole thing's a joke anyway. We now all think that we've got a little Simon Cowell on our shoulder who, we know good music when we hear it. So we have the old gatekeepers not creating talent, the A&R, and then you have the whole public who thinks they know what talent is, with zero educational skill in the area that we're talking about. And that creates, if that was in any other industry, like, iPhones, the Apple wasn't making iPhones, and then every single person thought they knew how to make an iPhone, we would have the crappiest phones on earth. And that's depressing. And that's what's happened to the music industry. And they're completely neolithic when it comes to trying to understand the internet. All they've done is fight the internet instead of embrace it and take it on. And then it took Apple, a completely separate company, like a technology company, to show the record industry how to run a music business by, setting up iTunes and then Apple Music. It's weird watching the teacher become the student, and it's interesting watching the public really kind of be very clueless but think it knows everything at the same time, because they can choose what they want rather than being told what to listen to as well. That compounded with the Simon Cowell thing is kind of dangerous. And then on the one last thing, on the subject of the music industry, is you have not really any direction with where are we going with music. If the industry is clueless, and then you've got the public who, then you have these weird enclaves, which gets back to the mind ghetto thing that I was talking about earlier, where I Googled Spotify, what's the most played genre of music on Spotify? And to my shock, I think it was like electronic music or something for Spotify. It was actually heavy metal. So there's a whole audience out there that's being completely not catered for by, the record industry. The most popular genre is heavy metal on Spotify. And no one knows that. I can guarantee nobody knows that. I've asked tons of music industry people like that question, and they no idea. So the music industry isn't even looking at a statistic like that and being like, oh, we should make heavy metal again, because there's clearly people out there who want it. They're only marketing music to children. And when we were younger, this is the last thing I'll say before I finish the lecture, is do you remember when music was made for adults by adults? I mean, yes, you had the Beatles and stuff like that, which had, fanatical, juvenile fans. But, on the whole, music was made by grown-ups, and it was a grown-up thing. Adults have been totally abandoned by the record industry. And the only way the record industry wants anything to do with adults is adults that are willing to spend money on their children. And that's also depressing, because it's losing a lot of its sophistication, and it's about a bottom line. I know the record industry has always been about a bottom line and, artist exploitation and all that, but it feels so utterly transparent at this point.
Well, I think that it makes perfect sense to me that the number one genre on Spotify would be a genre that is not readily accessible to the general public. I mean, there's, if you want electronic music, there's so many ways to find that, or if you want pop music, there's so many ways to find that. I don't even use Spotify, so that shows how old I am, but...
I don't either, actually. I'm on it, but I don't use it.
But, I definitely think that makes sense, because if you want to find a certain type of music that is not readily accessible, that's why a product like Spotify is so perfect for you.
It seems weird, though, because Spotify don't embrace that themselves. If you ever, were to go on the homepage or anything, they are absolutely not promoting any guitar-based music, which, I mean, it's just so interesting to me. I say this all the time. What we would have classed as a remix, back in the 90s, like an EDM, or as we would have said, dance music remix back in the day, is now the actual single.
Absolutely.
And it's just so weird. I think the one that really got me recently was the Coldplay Chainsmokers song.
Yes.
And it's something like this, whatever. This is hilarious. This is an unfinished Coldplay song that's been remixed by Chainsmokers, and it's being called a fucking song by Coldplay. I'm actually one of the rare few people who has not sort of got an unbridled odd hatred towards Coldplay for some reason, because I should hate them. But I think Chris Martin's actually quite a talented chap. I don't think they deserve all the hate they get, but that was weird. And that to me was just a complete sign of, it's like the Maroon 5 band. And how you can possibly turn around to anyone in a bar and say that you're the backing band for Maroon 5 is hilarious. I wouldn't have the balls to do it, because you're not doing anything anymore. I mean, it's just Levine and then a producer, and then they stand in for the photographs. I mean, they're not a band. There's no bands anymore. People talk about bands, but they're not really bands. They're not like Rage Against the Machine. It's like a front guy. The other guys with beards stand behind them in the videos, but then really it's, Dr. Luke or whoever producing the beat, as it were. The producer's the new band, but we talk about boy bands. The most annoying phrase ever. None of them play instruments. Okay, they sing, but they don't really play, band instruments. It's a band of boys. That's what they should call it. A band of merry men.
Well,
young men.
I'm a fan of Maroon 5, and I'm not saying that you are saying that you're not, but I'm a fan of Maroon 5 largely because I like Adam Levine's voice. I like Adam Levine, but the newer music that I've heard from them, one of the things that I noted as soon as the new album dropped is they no longer sound like Maroon 5 whatsoever. They sound like Adam Levine singing over various other things. All of the rock elements of their music are gone. Right. I mean, the new single.
It's not about Jane. It's not that. It's not guitar-driven or piano-driven music. It's all produced stuff.
Yeah, I mean.
By produced, I mean beat-driven.
Yeah, the new single with SZA doesn't sound. There's not a live instrument in it anywhere. So I'm like, what does the band do? That's what
I mean. And the public don't care. That's the other thing that sort of baffles me. I mean, we're discussing it now, but we care more 100% than anyone else. It saddens me that I suppose real life gets in the way, and I've never actually fully grown up. But for everyone else, music becomes really not so much of an issue for a majority of adults. They sort of stick with a certain enclave of music that they remember growing up in their sort of formative years of their teens, and then they kind of stick with it through the rest of their life. Whereas, of course, you and I are probably a lot more passionate about music than say a regular adult would be. But it's sad to see sort of people, just left behind, I guess.
I wake up on Tuesday mornings and I go to Billboard magazine's charts because they refresh on Tuesdays, and I look through the whole charts, like pretty much every chart, to find new music that I haven't heard. I mean, that's what how I discover artists. That's how I continue feeding my longtime love for music. But what I will tell you, and this should not be the case, there are months at a time often where I cannot discover one new song that either doesn't feel like a song I've already heard a million times, or that interests me at all. Like, I do think that there is a real lack of new music, specifically over the last several months, that has had any real appeal for me. And, that happens months at a time on occasion, and then we'll get 5 new songs that come out simultaneously, it feels like, and I'll be okay for a little bit. But
two sides to that. There's two sides. You said something at the beginning of that the statement, which was, I go on Billboard and I look at the top, whatever. There's other people who do that too, and I've been in the room while they do it. The other people that go through that same process are the fucking producers and songwriters. They are going to look at the top 10, and they're trying to
replicate that sound. Yeah.
What is already there, and it is heartbreaking, and it is maddening to me that this happens, where there's this sort of complete creative black hole. And of course, there are people out there who do art for the sake of art, and there are people out there who do art to make money. And I'm not going to be one of these cliche people who say you shouldn't be trying to make money from art, because I'm doing it too. But at that level, where people say, well, imitation is sort of the highest form of flattery. But when you just outright
that's not true.
Think of your own ideas, it's just moronic. There was a second point to what you said, but I've forgotten it. But that's right. So the other side of that is the radio industry, which I despise with a passion. I I used to hate going into radio stations. The sycophants, it's so gross to me. I sound like such a judgmental prick. It's because I am. And you go into a radio station, and these people are fully grown adults who are claiming to be DJs, who have never once had an original decision in that job ever. They are told what to do. They are told what to play. Yeah. And we kind of go along with it. A certain DJ, Radio 1, is acting like he's the tastemaker of whatever, and he's being told by a committee of people what to play, and he's just the front man for the next few years before he'll be replaced with a younger, prettier model to do the same job. And it's just bizarre to me. Anyway, getting off a little bit there, but the point that I was trying to make is, aside from hating the radio industry, on the back end is the front end, which is their playlisting. I mean, I did some research into Kiss 100 recently about how often does Drake play on Kiss in Los Angeles. So their playlist was 14 songs. That's just insane to me.
You just hit on one of the things that irritates the shit out of me. These radio stations are listed as being top 40, right? But at most, they have 20 songs on their playlist. Yes, I know that audience demand is high for certain songs, but there's no reason that I should hear whatever is in the top 10 twice in 1 hour. There's there's so many other songs.
Absolutely agree. Oh. It's all fear-driven. It's all fear-driven, and there's this brilliant cartoon, ironically done by the BBC. I don't know if they realised that they were having the piss taken out of themselves, but this cartoonist did this brilliant sort of thing about the music industry. It's sort of like a 5-minute sort of funny animation about the record industry. And, it just deals with that point entirely, which is, we are the brain-dead masses. In this comic strip, they play the song to this random guy, and he's like, it's like the worst song ever, and it's like, play 1, it's like, I fucking hate it. Play 2, I still hate it. Play 3, I mean, I've got used to it now, I'm starting to get the melody. Play 4, I love it, I'm going to tell all my friends. I don't want to get all sort of like InfoWarsy, but it's kind of just brainwashing. I think it's brain-dead people working at the radio stations who are like, we don't care enough to play other people, and we're too scared to take risks, and we don't want to alienate anyone by playing anything that's a little bit out there. Then you have the audience who are like, please don't scare us. I want the same thing with different words.
And you can see that and you can feel that in music. I mean, they'll add something to a song, like an instrumentation to a song. And this happened a number of years ago. It happened with a song by Jason Derulo, and it had a horn section. And then 2 months later, or less than 2 months later, that same horn section popped up in a song by Fifth Harmony. Okay, so obviously it worked once, we're going to do it again. You know what I mean? That's the mentality.
Yeah, Ariana Grande. It's, well, for a start, you have writing camps. I mean, the record industry's been doing writing camps for the last few decades. Properly. I mean, back in the day you had Motown and stuff where you had a bunch of writers and stuff, but sort of on a global level where a publishing company would hire a hotel and, invite, 50 songwriters to just write. And these songwriters are also generally laptop producers as well. They have some degree of, production skills, because you kind of need to be able to do more than just a songwriter these days. These people are in one tiny agar plate of music making. If you know anything about the music industry, you can name the top 2 record producers, which was one's, Dr. Luke, and the other guy, what's his name? I've already forgotten it. The guy who did Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys back in the day. What's his name, Christina? No, the other guy who's huge, and it's ironic I said the only 2, but I can't remember his second name. It'll come to me on a moment. Max Martin.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes.
Max Martin and Dr. Luke. No, you're fine. And it's those are the producers, and then you have the sort of the hilarious hybrid producers that people don't even realize are producers because everyone calls them DJs, which are people like Calvin Harris, who are actually proficient producers in terms of they're creating artists and artist records like Rihanna and stuff. But we have this sort of weird thing where it's like as soon as you stand behind 2 disc-shaped machines, then you're a DJ. But Max Martin and Calvin Harris pretty much have the same job. It's just Calvin goes one extra step and parties in Vegas, for a living. But they are theoretically doing the same thing.
Sorry, like that was hilarious.
Fine.
That was hilarious. That was a very, no wonder people think you're gay. That was a very shady read. I love that.
Oh, so everyone thinks I hate Calvin Harris. I'm only jealous of his height. That's about it. He's very tall. I wish I was as tall as him.
I heard this reworking by Shoshana Bean and a group of individuals of a Taylor Swift song. And it's with live instruments, and they turned it into this sort of like smoky... it just popped up on my Facebook yesterday, and I listened to it all afternoon on repeat. It is so good because it's so different. It sounds a little bit like Somebody I Used to Know by Gautier and Kimbra, the way they've arranged it. But it's so refreshing. Just when something new sounding comes across my internet or something, I jump on it because I'm so tired of what I've heard. The sounds of the artists that I'm hearing today, and it's always been the case in the industry. If it works once, then find another artist for a different label to do the same sound and capitalize while we can, kind of thing. But it is so refreshing to hear something that sounds different.
There's a really boring engineering reason as well that you probably aren't aware of why you feel that way. The one thing that you said there that was really interesting to me was you said it was kind of like Gautier. It's sort of a smoky I haven't heard it, but it's acoustic driven. I'm guessing it's with live instruments. That you said, right?
Yes, cello and a violin and two vocals.
What you're also experiencing is ear fatigue, not just in the sort of I'm listening to the same style of music, or it's also down to the actual sound. The music is so heavily compressed. Now, no one outside of the industry really knows what that means, but the modern pop production, there is what's called the loudness war, where all this sort of synth, computer-driven music is so heavily engineered. It's so completely flatlined. And if you were to look at the waveform of, the original Taylor Swift song, it's what we call duct taped. So generally, it will just look like the wave file will be just like a block, a long strip. Whereas if you were to look at the waveform, probably of the Gautier-style track that you're talking about, it's got the sort of the ebbs and flows, the peaks and troughs. And that's dynamic range. Now, I don't want to lose people here, but it's really important because the thing that makes music like that so appealing is your ear has the opportunity to rest on occasions. There's a quiet moment. There's dynamism. We always talk about in the industry tension and release, but we're thinking about phrases, so we want the tension in the pre-chorus before we have the release in the chorus itself. But that can also apply to the sound engineering. No one does dynamic range in modern pop music. It's just loud from start to finish. There's no moments where your ear can just go down for a second. Like orchestral music, there is that dynamism. There is movement, not just in what the notes are doing, but in what the sound is doing, the volume of things. And we've completely forgotten that. The radio industry had to forget that because the way that radio stations are set up is that they're heavily compressed. They have these giant, compressing machines that cost an absolute fortune just to slam the bandwidth so they can get the music as loud as possible. And that is hurting our ears. It's deafening us, not just, literally, but it's making us lose interest in the music because it doesn't move you. There's not that movement sonically. Another lecture. I keep on lecturing you. I'm so sorry.
I don't mind a good lecture. I am a student of the industry, and one of the reasons why I love talking to people who are involved in industries that I love and admire is because of the fact it educates me. As a result, it educates listeners. And one of the, cornerstones of when I started my podcast was to educate, entertain, and inform. We want to present people who have perspectives that could enlighten people, or in this case, you may have given a listener out there an understanding of what it is they've experienced without having a term for it. What is it that's going on with this? Oh, that's what it is.
Articulation is so important. And this is the one thing this is why we need more experts in things, because articulation, especially with the way the world is today, but that's what I suppose throughout time, actually, it's having people who can articulate. Like you and I, we could never be ice cream tasters. Now, we could eat ice cream all day long, right? But we couldn't actually work at an ice cream company and communicate to the makers of this ice cream what is a good batch of ice cream and what isn't. We could be like, yeah, that's okay, that one's not. That's, you know what I mean?
Right.
But there is someone out there whose job it is to professionally every day and go into a factory and taste ice cream, and they've learned the dialect. They know how to communicate with people. And if you're trying to create, this is what's great about what you're doing. It's like we need people to be honest for a start, and we need people to know what the hell they're talking about in everything. It doesn't matter what it is.
What you have described as being an ability to articulate terminology, feelings, emotions is very specific, and I think that it comes with having a great deal of exposure to and a level of expertise in whatever field you're in. I have a greater ability to articulate certain things than I do. I mean, with makeup, for example, I can look at somebody's makeup and say, somebody else will be like, oh, she's okay. And I'd be like, well, this is done well. This is too light. That's too dark. It muddies what you're seeing, because I have years of expertise in that area through my own practice. And as opposed to a casual viewer, or they sum it up. And I tell my friends all the time, okay or fine are not ways to accurately articulate a situation. Oh, this was okay. Well, why just okay? If you put it into words.
Yeah, that's not an answer.
You are talking about and expressing a level of frustration with the industry and the production elements of the industry. You are a music producer. So how does that clash with your end game of wanting to produce music?
I don't make hits. That's how. Because as soon as I hear something that's already happened, there's something in my brain that stops me from copying it. So I'm the complete opposite of how to be a modern-day music producer. You listen to, like I did the other night, Prince's "You Don't Have to Be Rich to Be My Girl," whatever. I don't know what the name of that song is.
Kiss.
And
it's called Kiss.
That song is like nothing else, right? And I'm not a huge Prince fan. The song is fucking ridiculous. I was saying to my partner the other day, it's like the backing band were like, everyone was doing their job correctly apart from Prince on that song. It was like all the backing singers are like tight and on the button. The music is tight and clean. And then Prince, it sounds like he's doing like a ridiculous cover of someone else's song because he's just like wailing all over it. But that's Prince. He paid for the real musicians to show up and do their job correctly. And then it was Prince's job to have those, like, just be completely candid and be completely Prince. And that candidness, you just don't experience really in music at all anymore. There's no risk-taking at all levels. I mean, there's a little bit here and there. That's what I thought was so great about Skrillex. It was like, he obviously didn't expect, to get the, tsunami of success that, that waved over him, and quite rightly so. But no one is going into the industry to break the rules or anything anymore. I think that's the one sad thing that's happened in a lot of creative industries. No one is breaking rules. Madonna likes to think she's breaking rules by, saying silly things all the time in interviews. But, I mean, for real, breaking the rules. No, there is no punk rock in pop music, and it's also not being popularized. There is no rise up against. And it's just so weird for me, because you'd think in the advent of the internet there would be more rebellion. There'll be more people sort of musically expressing the music industry is shit and we need to do something about it and put that in a song, like, Rage Against the Machine or Sex Pistols. I mean, my goodness, do you think we're ever going to have a Sex Pistols again? Is that ever going to happen? No. We are so... We're so soft now, I feel, and that's really frustrating. I'm not saying that all music needs to be angry and shouty or anything like that, because, my God, I cannot stand emo music. A bunch of privileged people complaining about their privileged lives they have. But I don't know where we go, sort of, with music production, because I think that everyone's got a lot of things wrong. That's why I'm doing less of it, by the way. I'm producing less music, and I'm getting more into scoring and soundtrack stuff, because now I'm sort of in a sort of happy long-term relationship. My sort of the tropes that I used to go to for my solo projects were sort of like heartbreak and stuff like that. And so I'm happy now, and I'm not going to be a smug prick and write happy songs. A lot of people probably don't want to hear, unless they're coming out of Pharrell Williams' mouth, pardon me. But, you know, with the rest of the industry, I don't know. I think it's just all fear. I think everyone's trying to make a quick buck. There's a lot of people who are in the industry 1 minute and they're out the next, because anyone can pick up a laptop. You know, the laptop is the new guitar. In the 80s, there was a million bazillion kids who were trying to become Metallica or Guns N' Roses. And you see them now as 40-year-old men wearing Guns N' Roses T-shirts, you know, in bars.
Those are my fraternity brothers. Leave them alone.
Oh, Guns N' Roses is fine. They're amazing. Don't get me wrong. Look what they did. Look what they managed to create. Like a million kids who wanted to be like that.
Totally.
That was the thing. The technology was cheap enough to make people think that. Like, you could go and buy some makeup, but you won't be able to do your makeup like Willem anytime soon, ever. You know, and this is the other thing. We've got to stop pretending that we're all good at the same things. There are some people who are like absolutely brilliant. I'm not ever going to be a brilliant record producer because I think too much. I'm like constantly terrified about making a sound that I recognize on another record. I mean, look what's happening to someone like Ed Sheeran. He's getting sued left and right because he can't write songs that aren't other people's. I'm not saying he's doing that deliberately, but I don't want to be in that industry anymore. If every great song's been written, like, I know that I've never made a song that's beaten any of my favorite Electric Light Orchestra records. You know, that's my job. You know, so that tells me something. It's like, well, I'd rather go and do something where I feel like I stand a chance, because I feel that all the best songs, everyone pretty much could have stopped making music, pop music, like classic songs after Whitney Houston Bodyguard album. I'm not kidding. It is one of the most incredible albums of all time. And, you know, if you want, like, the combination of incredible, or like Michael Jackson's Thriller, just in terms of all the people who are involved in that, just the pedigree of talent from top to bottom, the care, and, you know, that everyone had in that, and you just don't have that anymore. And that's not me trying to be rose-tinted glasses. Of course, there's all the bullshit, like Whitney Houston died of, you know, drug overdose or whatever. Obviously, she wasn't a happy person. That sucks. But Taylor Swift is Taylor Swift because she's a multi-millionaire. You know, she's Taylor Swift. Yes, she has some good songs, but she pays a lot of people to shut up as well, who were probably involved in songwriting at some level, who get paid off to not be credited. You know, this is someone who had to have their father buy a record label she couldn't get signed to. And that's the world we live in now. You know, the amount of blogs where my music is being put on the same list as someone as Beyonce or a Taylor Swift, you know, list. And it's like, but no one is factoring in the infrastructure behind either of those artists. You know, when you say independent artist, Taylor Swift was an independent artist when she bought the record label she was signed to. But no one talks about that because everyone wants to assume that talent is with these people, not just millions of dollars. And we don't want to think about it because we don't want our favorite artist to just be someone who's the sort of food equivalent of McDonald's, you know. And don't get me wrong, Taylor Swift is fine. There's nothing wrong with her music. I just wish she was honest, you know. And with Beyonce, it's like there's just. And why would I want to, you know, compete with that infrastructure when never in a million years, even if I had $1 million, why would I spend $100,000 on a music video? You know, my ego's not that big. You know? So there's a lot of things that need to change in the industry, and I just think that we need to sort of democratize ourselves a little bit more, and we need to get behind artists that we genuinely care about. People need to care about music again. You know, like we don't care about water, as I said at the beginning, we don't care about artists. We only care about Taylor Swift because we're constantly, I see UPS trucks at the top of my street with her face on the side of it, and it says, take a picture of Taylor Swift. I'm being told to take a picture of Taylor Swift on the side of a UPS van in Glendale. Like, what? Like, what has that got to do with fucking music? And I'm a male. I'm a male because fuck that I'm a male. But I'm theoretically a pop singer, and I'm looking at someone who does the same job as me. That's like an electrician driving past like Enron and being like, "Look, you guys are the same. You do the same job, right? You create power." It's like, no, it's not really the same. So for me, it's like it's a mountain that I just look at the mountain from a distance and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That mountain's fine over there, and I'm good right over here. That's why I left, the record industry and went independent deliberately in the first place.
I've heard from many artists that it's definitely a dual-edged sword of being signed to a major label, because one of the things that you've described is this idea that whatever it is about you that's appealing enough to a label to get you signed then goes through an entire process where they want to streamline it for the masses, as opposed to finding a way to allow a person's personality and originality to be the selling point and then taking it upon themselves to sell it.
I'd say 10 years ago that was absolutely the case, so I don't even think they bother doing that anymore. I would totally agree with that statement. When the internet wasn't as a fledgling, it was more of a fledgling thing than it is now, which is the internet's more established in the record industry. Now the record industry finds something that's already fully established and has already got 2 million hits on YouTube videos. It's sort of like a Latin American sort of hot, spicy, 19-year-old boy who's, got a little bit of financing, private capital from parents, and got a good producer and just looks great on camera, and, they funded it themselves, and then, record label shows up at the very end of the process and says, well, thank you for doing all the hard work that we're supposed to do. Now, can we give you the last, 10 million for the marketing, and we'll try and, scrape a 2 million profit off the top of that. That's what it is now. Back then, they were signing weirdos like me, from, crappy towns in South London, and taking risks, taking gambles. I think record labels are brilliant at giving people money that they shouldn't be giving money to. They should never have given me a record deal in a million years. By today's standards, I used to be quite bitter about the whole experience with the record labels, but I look back on it now and I'm like, I'm so grateful that I got shafted left and right by people, but on the whole, it's like, what an incredible opportunity. Now, it's up to you how far you want to take that. I could have played the game way more than I did. I could have totally done that, but I was mouthy. You can hear how I am. I'm pretty blunt, and I don't mince my words. And to some degree, you've got to play the game, and I'm such a loner, generally. Then you thrust me into a sort of a giant conglomerate like that. A lot of artists, getting back to your original point about, you sort of purify the art, you cleanse it for the masses. I would, of course, agree with that. If you're someone who doesn't say no, and I didn't say no, I kind of went. I was like, well, this is the record label. This is what happens, right? And if you do say no, then you have the potential of being shelved. There is a power structure in place in these labels. They've lost a lot of that power since then. And to some degree, two rich parents funding their, daughter or son's, dream to be a pop singer, if done well, yeah, I mean, the record label can step in with a checkbook. And, as I said earlier, which is there is no particular creative driver in the record industry anymore. The creatives on the sort of the business side have disappeared. Well, then, at least if it's privately funded creativity that then can be brought to the masses by their checkbook, and they're not dirtying the creativity as much, then that's good, I guess. That's one thing that has helped with the internet and the music industry is brought power and, more affordable technology. The record label used to own the technology. EMI Studios, there's, EMI owned, made mixing consoles and things like that. RCA made magnetic tape for recording the masters. They owned the technology. We own the technology now. We don't necessarily own the talent, but we own, you and I, we know how to probably do a little bit of Photoshop, a little bit of, there's a little bit of that on a computer like a million other people do. The record label doesn't control that aspect of it so much anymore.
Well, Frank, I appreciate, I guess I should call you Vincent. Vincent, I appreciate you talking today, and I really feel enlightened by your perspective. And I think that...
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's valuable. And again, especially after what some artists could have taken as a complete faux pas of outing you when you're not out and outing you when you're not gay, that could have been taken by some people as really, I don't know, offensive. And I appreciate not only you being so easygoing about it, but actually talking to us and talking to me, even in the wake of that.
Well, my biggest thing that I try and learn now I'm in my 30s is to be less of a hypocrite. And I want to be as intellectually honest and balanced in everything. And I want to live in a world where we are post-sexuality, post-racial. We just are people with ideas, and we help each other as best as we can. And the labels kind of disappear. So if I was to get a stick up my ass about someone accidentally, outing me, I mean, that doesn't say a lot for my principles.
Well, I do appreciate that, and thank you for joining us. Listeners, that was music producer FrankMusik joining us to talk about his experience in the record industry. Follow him on social media. It's at FrankMusik, FrankMusik, FrankMusik. Check him out, and you can find him, as I mentioned, on 2 tracks by RuPaul, Fly Again being one of them from her recent album. And he produced the 2011 Erasure album, Tomorrow's World. Check him out and support the artists who support us. I will tell you that I'm going to be saving another portion of this interview for our post-Christmas episode. Frank and I continue to go on, but we get really in-depth, and I've chosen to hold that for you guys. Close out the end of the year with a big bang. We will have FrankMusik back on with us in approximately 2 episodes. I am Pollo Del Mar. You're listening to Party Foul Radio.